You've arrived at the Mental Health Spotlight podcast with therapist Kais. Today's guest is author of Bloodlines, a memoir of harm and healing, Tracey Yokas. This book is a must-read guide and tribute to any family in a mental health or eating disorder crisis. The book powerfully explores the concept of healing as a family unit and the complexities of self-discovery, long-term trauma, resilience, and openness. When Tracey's daughter is diagnosed with complex mental health and eating disorder challenges, Tracey discovers that she can only support Faith's recovery if she is willing to truly immerse herself in her own recovery journey and to begin dispelling generational self-narratives and addressing negative behaviors. Tracey beautifully illustrates how shame lives in the silence and how we need to learn to just listen, be safer places for each other to land, and redefine self-care to develop a loving relationship with ourselves that eventually enriches our families and ostensibly all of our relationships. Tracey's tone in Bloodlines is sharply honest and starkly specific, but it lands the reader in a safer place where healing and hope are vibrant and exciting.
Hello.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
And I'm so excited to talk about this topic with you. So I appreciate your time. I'm sure you're busy because this book, it just came out, right? This is promotion time.
May. Mm-hmm.
This is right in the heart of you letting the world know about Bloodlines. And first, before anything, I want to thank you for writing this book. I'm sure for you, it was your own journey for you and your daughter. I'm sure it was a difficult book to write because you put your soul out on paper, as you talk about in the afterword. But we need people like you, especially the parent side, to talk about your journey, not only in healing yourself, which is so important, but in your daughter's journey. And then I feel like I can share that with families and say, this is what it's going to look like. I'm sorry ahead of time, but look at the very end.
Read it, but also read the end.
Wait for it.
Thank you. Yeah. One thing I definitely was looking for when we were going through all of this was something like this book. I read a lot of books by therapists, and those were very important, and journalists and a journalist who was a mom also. But yeah, I didn't find anything exactly like this. And I just really wanted other mothers to know that they are not alone.
And that's so primary right there, because I hear that a lot. It's isolating. And this isn't just an eating disorder story. This is a mother-daughter story. This is a mental health story. It covers so many aspects of parenting that even if you're not dealing with the specifics that Faith has in the book, it matters.
Yeah, thank you.
So I'm going to jump right in. Often in our therapy sessions with families, we'll say things or it'll come up that parents have to get out of their own way, because their story will become entangled in their child's. It's going to pull all of your emotions. It's going to take you to places that you probably don't want to go. That meant you had to sort of heal your own space. And what was a challenge? Just some core challenges in you and or your husband being able to go there in order to help Faith. And I know that's a really general question, but that also leans into at some point you had to deal with your trauma.
Yes, but that took a while, I will say. So I guess at first the challenges were initially not even knowing, and I had a master's degree in counseling psychology, which at the time I didn't tell anyone because it was one more thing that added to my shame. So I didn't understand when things went quote unquote wrong, for lack of a better way of saying it, that the dynamics that had carried over from my childhood, fancy words like, enmeshed, being too tangled up with my daughter, and codependent, being whisked away every time she had a wave of emotions, I had one too. Like, I did not understand at that time that those were inherited relational dynamics that were really unhealthy to what was going on. So early on, I would say part of the trouble is not knowing what we don't know. For example, expectations. I was given a set of expectations as a child. I did not question them. I was born, I was raised, I was going to do certain things. I was going to go to college, I was going to get a job, I was going to get married, I was going to have a family. And some people, I guess, inherently know they can like rub against those things and not necessarily make those choices, but some of us don't. And so we can very easily repeat that dynamic with not knowing that we're creating a structure with a lot of expectations that we think our child needs to do the same thing. So, of course, I was raised a certain way. So my daughter was going to go to school, then she was going to go to college, and she was going to graduate and get a job, all the things. without really understanding. I really didn't even know that I could question those things or that that was something that maybe needed to be questioned. Was I making decisions for myself or not? Why was I making them? It's just an unconscious pattern that can repeat. And I also want to say for me, even having the background I had, I could not understand the difference between what might be considered enabling when we were going through this process or what is helpful. In my world, all the things I'm doing to be helpful are helpful. A therapist might say, and probably did say, that we were enabling certain things to continue. Just let our daughter experience consequences. Well, if you're the type of person and have the type of background that I had in the childhood, I was literally incapable of allowing my daughter to have consequences because I was so overwhelmed with the discomfort myself of the whole thing and the feeling of being compelled to fix this, to take care of her. That was my job. That's my reason to be alive, is to be a mom and take care of my daughter and do all these things. So it can be such an unhealthy, constricted dynamic, but we don't see that clearly. And so we have all of that going on, not to mention the fear, the confusion, the overwhelm, the chaos. So I would say that those were some of the things going on. And like, where do you start? And when your child isn't willing to eat and you're fearing that they're going through puberty and not getting enough food, it's just a lot of factors kind of crash together simultaneously.
And you're in crisis mode. That's foggy. That is full of emotions coming at you in 100 directions. And then you're supposed to make these sober decisions and get, like you said, that enmeshed expectations out of the way. That's a
Right.
lot to ask. That's a
Yeah.
big ask. And that leans into what you were kind of hinting at earlier, is it takes a long time. None of this is happening overnight for any family. It's quite a journey in mental health and certainly with eating disorders. I'm sure we'll get to talking about stamina at some point. That's your whack-a-mole that you talk about in Bloodlines,
Yeah.
which is a great metaphor. The stamina to do this work as a family, because if only Faith, who is the daughter in the book, were to do this, it wouldn't work. You needed the whole family unit. So you were able to respond to that, but you were willing. And I guess what I'm wondering, where did your willingness come from to do that work that for you was probably terrifying? Some people don't do it. Some people just keep pushing through. It's like hands against the water, your feet in the sand. Where did you pull from to know that you had to do that? What helped you do that?
Well, to be perfectly honest, it was a string of failures in her treatment journey and the suffering. I had been suffering because of my history, but that was more relative to my own self. So it was only in this journey of feeling like I'm doing everything I can do. We're taking the next step. I'm listening to everybody, and it's getting worse. It's not even staying the same. Forget about getting better. It's not staying the same. It's getting worse. And then we're in the hospital, and then there's self-harm. The suffering was so profound as treatment was failing, again, for lack of a better word. And that's very painful. And so, two main moments that I highlight in the book, which is ending up back in the emergency room after we did residential treatment and that failed, and there was a hospital, and we end up back in the emergency room again. And
Yes.
then the pie chart incident, which was designed to,
The whole person wheel when
yes, the
you
whole part,
sat
right.
there with blank spots.
If that had happened at any other time of my life, I would not have taken it so hard. But because of where we were in the journey with my daughter and feeling so helpless and wondering if anything was ever going to get better, and to your point, not really having a good routine for my stamina. So, not having stamina, being exhausted, being hurt, being confused, all the things, then to see the manifestation of my low self esteem, that's how I took it, on this piece of paper, and then having everybody else not mirror that except for my daughter. These were the two key moments where I hit my own personal emotional rock bottom and knew that I had no other way forward than to do my own work. And I didn't understand at the time that that's all we can ever do. Of course, as parents, we have responsibilities to help our children, but we can only ever do our own work because we don't have control over other people. I think most of us understand that sort of rationally, but until that is actually challenged, we don't understand it maybe emotionally. So when I had to face that fact that I really could control nothing but myself and that I had to start healing my own dynamics and my own volatility and my own anger and my own hurt, that would eventually really have no choice in the best way but to bleed out into my relationships with the people that I cared about most.
Beautifully said. But you put a lot of work into knowing how to verbalize that.
Yes, yeah, it took a long time. And I
Yes.
think I say in there, it took me over 10 years to write it. So it was a lot of back to the drawing board.
Recovery is not linear. Bring it in every time. And I have a cautionary statement there, I guess I feel like I need to say is that just because parents do or don't do this work, you're still not guaranteed a recovery for your child, which is terrifying. But as a parent, you can choose to find recovery along with them. And that can be very helpful for them. But also, you walk away from all this pain, all this courage with something also. And in your case, you both found recovery, which is unbelievable.
Yeah, it is a blessing and a gift. You know, the word lucky comes out sometimes, and I suppose there's a little bit of luck involved in it too, but really, we have worked so hard.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been 12 years. We've been doing this for a very long time now. We've all put in a lot of work and effort to get where we are now. And I just want to say something too about the idea of choice, because I think that's another thing that we cannot understand. I don't know if we can force ourselves to wake up. We can have forces at play manipulating us and our relationships, our behavior, our understanding of ourselves that we just are completely unaware of. There could be many more things going on that we are just not aware of because we've been being conditioned, but we just don't know. It wasn't like I am sitting there at the pie chart moment and just going, wow, I'm going to make a choice to really figure out my healing. Like, that is not what I was thinking in my head. It was, I'm fucked. I don't know what's going on. I'm devastated. I'm a mess. This cannot stay the way it is. So it was more like caged animal, no choice. Where am I going from here? Because this is just a disaster. That was really more the energy at the time. It took years for that energy to start to change.
You use the metaphor throughout the book of the bottom. That bottom keeps getting lower and lower, which is an addiction tenet as well, that until you really get that bottom, you can't always start coming up. And that sounds like that moment felt probably like pretty close to your rock bottom.
100%. Yeah. And I think it's important for us to expand our understanding of that language around people who don't have traditional types of addictions. But I think it goes into so much judgment, shame with our own selves. We all have issues, but it took me a long time to be able to go like, God, my coping mechanisms suck too. I'm drinking a bottle of wine by myself every night to numb so that I can just feel like I can survive. How is that so much different? They're maybe culturally more acceptable, but I mean, those are culturally more acceptable than self-harm. But is it any different?
Exactly. It's still self-directed. Yes.
Yes, these behaviors that I'm engaging in are hurting me. So who am I to judge? And it took a while to get there because I think as parents, even if we don't want to judge our kids, even if we want to understand, we get so wrapped up in the behavior that they're engaging in, the behavior of not eating or overeating or vomiting or self-harm, or the behavior, which isn't really a choice, but the chaos with the dysregulation. And again, for lack of a better way of describing it, like a temper tantrum in a 14-year-old,
Yeah.
because they don't have their own ability to regulate either. We get so wrapped up into that and the chaos that it's causing for us, for them. They can't go to school. Our lives are disrupted. Everything is a big mess. We get so focused on that. Maybe rationally, we understand that there are things going on inside that we don't understand. But because the behavior is what we see and what we experience, that is what we become hyper focused on. And we kind of lose the thread of what we should really all be focusing on because we're so afraid of the behaviors that our kids are engaging in.
And I love that you brought that up because that comes up so often. And then when you're looking at the behaviors, anger, resentment, all the feelings that make you probably feel even worse as a parent because you're feeling those about your child. And that's when we're angry at the eating disorder. We're focusing on not the person, but saying that versus feeling it in the moments. you have to live that to understand. But you probably heard that, and I'm sure you worked on that. But that must be really hard to take this person you love that once looked one way to you and then see them behaving in such a different way.
Well, absolutely. And let's be honest also in the amount of lashing out there is towards parents. It's so painful because, yes, you're loving this person who can't live their life anymore. So that's devastating in and of itself. If they've gotten to the point where they can't go to school, they aren't able to spend any time with their friends, they don't want to leave their room, they're just not taking care of themselves. That is all painful enough in and of itself. And then you add the layer on where if you try to engage with them or do what you feel like you're being told to do, and what people are telling you, I mean, professionals, then they're telling you to fuck off and there's nothing wrong with me. You're the one with the problem.
And you have to take on that role, which is so painful. You have to be that person.
Yeah, and it's really hard to not take that stuff personally. Now, again, for whatever reason, I don't know why. I don't know if it's a gender thing or just a me thing and my husband thing. It still hurt my feelings. So I don't want to say this like it was no problem because it was a problem. My daughter telling me to fuck off, the first couple times, then I got over it because I'm like, I know this is not her talking.
You even said that in the book. One of the therapists tried to correct you, and you're like, "Are we really worried about the word right now?"
Like, we don't have bigger problems. My husband, on the other hand, now that's a different
Yeah.
story. And there's an age difference between us. So there's a generational thing going on, but disrespect from a child to a parent of the level that one can experience when their child is struggling with a mental illness, certainly was not something he had ever experienced before and had really no tolerance for. I am a big fan of that's not the battle I'm going to pick
Yeah.
today or ever.
There's so much conflict wherever you can not let there be conflict. And you talk about
Exactly.
this a lot in Bloodlines. You talk about your and Theo's relationship as two people thrown into this shame circus, everything the frenzy that it is. And you both looked at it differently at times. And then it sounds like over time there was some confluence. How did you navigate those differences? And did it help you to be part of some of the family therapy, or did you do it on your own, or did it just hurt like hell?
Yeah, my initial answer is poorly, is how
Yeah.
we managed it. Really
Well,
poorly.
you didn't get a handbook when you became parents for this. If there is one, please let me know and I will suggest that.
If I find it, I will definitely let you know for sure. Again, I think initially we were both reacting in such different ways that that caused problems in and of itself. And we were, as things progressed, not at the beginning, but as things progressed, we were required to engage in couples therapy. That was part of when Faith was admitted to the local eating disorder clinic. Much more therapy got added into the mix at that time.
They required it,
Yes,
not just family based therapy, but
couples and family group. I was having my own individual therapy on my own, which I had started almost immediately. And I can't stress enough for people how important I think that is.
oh, can you say that
It's
again?
just so,
Really
yes,
loud?
it's so important. Don't go this alone. I was literally just talking to somebody this morning who's having a child who's struggling with mental illness and had the same conversation. We need to learn things and know things and do things in a way we never had to do them before. There's no reason why we would have to know that till now, but now we do. So now it becomes our responsibility to not only take care of ourselves in that way, but to also start learning the skills that we need to build, because why would we know them? I mean, same thing. There's no handbook. We don't need to know these skills until we need to know them.
If I can add fanfare there, I will,
Fireworks.
because you are such an integral part. If you don't take care of you, it's going to be a lot harder. And you knew that. You got
Right.
right out there and said, okay, even if you didn't know you had all that baggage yet, you probably suspected, even without that, you might have said, this is probably a good idea. And wow, was it a good idea?
Well, and I can't stress enough too. It took me a year and 2/3 approximately. I 100% missed, completely missed every week when my therapist was asking me what I could do to take care of myself. Every
You're like,
single
I
week
walked
I
the
missed that.
dog.
Right. I have my hair in a clip. I
Right?
have sweatpants on. I mean, what? Not only what she was asking me to do for myself, but that she was asking me to do what I wanted my daughter to do. That's the part that I missed. I actively rejected. So I didn't miss that I wasn't taking care of myself. I actively rejected that. I felt so ashamed of myself, not of my daughter, but that I hadn't been able to prevent this from happening. All the things. I actively rejected her suggestion that the only person I could take care of was me. I didn't feel entitled to that, but I completely missed that she was asking me to do what we wanted our daughter to do. That went right over my head. But yeah, finally, like a year and 2/3 into it, it was like, oh, really, the only person I can take care of is me. Now I have to figure out what that means. And by then, I had already hit my emotional rock bottom and finally understood that this was the only way forward. So I kind of came to it kicking and screaming.
Like, fine, I'll do self-care. Fine.
How I understand and talk about self-care today, even after that realization, is of course 10 years later or whatever, completely different. Like I fully believe and say all the time that I believe self-care is the most misunderstood necessity of our day because we think about it like manis and pedis and massages and even going to therapy, outside stuff. And I'm a big fan of all those things. But the component of the healing work when we really engage in a type of self-care that's designed to heal these aspects. And the idea is doing that so that the real you, whatever that is, whoever it is, which has been covered up, can start to emerge and the freedom that you can now exist in your own skin and develop relationships from a foundation of compassion and empathy and mutual respect that maybe you didn't even know you didn't have before. This is where true connection comes into play when we start allowing ourselves to be seen for who we are and we start to attract people who love us for who we are and who we love. Friendships was a big thing for me because I couldn't hang on to a friend. I was in my 40s before I had what I would like consider a bestie. And I had a string of failed friendships behind me, not understanding why that kept happening. We have to kind of shift our language around self-care because I know, because I went through it. Someone talking to me about what I can do to take care of myself when my kid won't eat, like I'm not going there. And I don't understand why you're asking me to.
If we define it using your great way you described it, that might make it easier for people to engage with it.
Yeah.
If we don't say it's manis and petties necessarily, it is an evolution of self that you deserve. That changes it.
Absolutely. When we're talking about creating who we are from a healthy point of view, when we couch it in that kind of language, especially if we're talking to people who are going through a really chaotic time, maybe because also what it does, which we sort of say this with the put your oxygen mask on first language. If you're dead, you can't help anyone else. So we understand it that way. But when we're talking about loved ones who are struggling with mental illness or whatever real struggle we're going through, we may need to be in this, you mentioned it earlier, for a very long time. So how are we going to keep showing up? And I met young women in treatment whose mother, who had had enough and who walked away. And that is a devastating thing. I saw the result of that on these young girls who were sitting in family group therapy by themselves with no one there. Why not? Because I'm too much. I'm too broken. Just so painful. So that's our responsibility. It is our responsibility. It is not our child's responsibility to try to fix themselves or whatever message they're getting. That is our responsibility to take care of ourselves so that we can keep showing up in the healthiest way possible for ourselves and for them.
And then if you both do that and the journey works in the direction that is progressive, then you have a whole new relationship too. There is some beautiful benefits of the challenge that you have to go through in recovery. It's a little bit of toxic positivity during the process because no one wants to hear about, you're going to appreciate la, la, la. But when you do get on the other side, it's like, wow, the momentum changes and there's so much. I'm sure you can speak to that too. Shame comes up a lot though. And boy, we talk about that a lot in disordered eating. And you beautifully commented on so many ways that it leaks in. And then we have isolation. Eating disorders are very isolating. You talk a lot about that. Isolating, this idea of please talk, don't hide. How do we help parents and what would you suggest they do to not be in that isolation stage? Were there tactics for you that helped you communicate or be more open with your family?
That's a great question and a really important question because I think, again, for my situation, I was also battling generational trauma in that regard. Because when you come from a family where there's generational trauma, the one thing you never ever do is talk about it. You don't know that as a child. You're just not talking about things. And if you bring something up, you're told to be quiet, or whatever. So you don't know that the shame lives in the silence, that it grows in the silence, it's planted in the silence. And sadly, that gets passed on to our children, really, whether we want it to or not. I mean, that's just how it works. There's been enough studies now where they figured out that that's true. So you may be coming up against not only all the things that are happening right in front of you, but you also may be coming up against things from the past that are feeling impossible. So one answer is get into therapy because that's going to help you deal with that and make the effects of shame more apparent to you so that you can make more choices about your thoughts, feelings, actions, conversations. And I had to do that starting in therapy because that was the only place I felt capable of doing it because I knew that that was a safe container. So I had to practice that first for a long time, like being in connection with my therapist like that. But I hope people hearing this, I get it. Your child can't go to school, you withdraw from your friends, from your activities, you're at home, you don't feel like you can reach out. It is a very courageous thing to do. Really, the answer I have is to start small. Start small with someone that you know, even if you don't know that they can hear you the way you need to be heard, is someone who is willing to learn. Just like we're talking about, we need to be willing to learn. Like we might have to help our friends, family, or whoever the person is, that you can start with someone. And if they say things, because this takes some wherewithal too, like, I just need you to hear me. Can you not try to tell me what to do? Because when I was teaching for NAMI, I heard this all the time. Parents who were desperate to have somebody in their family to talk to, and they'd be like, I was devastated. I gave up because they kept telling me just this or that. We need to stop doing that. I say this all the time. We all have responsibility when it comes to talking and being open about mental health. We all have to learn how to be safer places to land. That means not judging, not trying to fix the situation. Just listen. It sounds so easy, but it's like the hardest, literally like one of the hardest things in the world to do.
Especially for a parent, because your job is to coach, you believe. Maybe that's an expectation you talked about earlier, and to guide and to respond and to fix and to heal and to nurture. I hear this working with a lot of young people. I just want someone to hear me. I wish they'd quit trying to fix me unless I ask. Now, if that young person or whomever asks you and says, what do you think? Totally different story, right?
Exactly. We've all experienced that, whether we have a mental health diagnosis or not, and none of us like it. How have we not figured out yet that that's not really helpful? We don't like it. So why have we not figured this out? But it's not our intention to impart the message into our child that they're broken, that they need to be fixed, that they're incapable. But when we start jumping in and telling them what to do and assessing the problem, and what do we think the message is they're going to receive?
They already know, honestly. They just don't know how. Anyone struggling with an eating disorder is unbelievably bright. They know. They just don't know how.
Right, exactly.
And yelling and barking at them won't get them there.
I want to add to that because this was true for me. I didn't know. No one allowed me or gave me the space to know. I didn't know. And so that's another pattern that gets repeated. Maybe if I had been given the space as a teen, I would know, but I didn't. My daughter didn't know because how could she know? Because I didn't know. Like none of us knew anything. I want to be clear that understanding this was a long process, but also the key to having a more compassionate relationship. My parents were both already passed away, but it's not too late. I have so much more compassion for my parents as individuals. And I think my daughter does for me and my husband because of my doing this work and understanding them on a level of humanity. It's about understanding it so that we can heal that pattern and then have more respect for ourselves and everyone else around us. So, yeah, I was not great at encouraging my daughter to know because I didn't know how to do that. And in fact, I think very strongly one of the reasons it took me 10 years to write the book was because I didn't have a level of language that I might otherwise have had if I didn't have the type of childhood that I did. So the writing in and of itself was the rewiring. I also did other things. So I did engage in some EMDR and I did engage in these therapy things that are very helpful. But the literal act of having to come back to the page year after year, time after time, and wrestle with why am I not figuring this out? What is it I want to say? What was my experience is what helped me develop a language. So even when I started my healing journey, I didn't know what I thought or felt. I'm a big Brene Brown fan. So back in the day, she had a few online classes that I signed up for, and she would ask these questions for journal prompts. And I would literally be like, I don't even know. I don't know. I don't know. Here I am. I'm in my 40s and I don't know.
Right. And in speaking to Brene Brown, her quote, there's no comfort in courage. For you to go on this journey, hurt like hell. You weren't promised how long. You knew you'd get there. I mean, I hope somewhere along the line someone held hope for you and that it was there. But you just had to keep at it until somehow it started to come together for you. And you mentioned the generational part, but there's also cultural things with this. No one was talking about executive functioning and feelings and self-care and mindfulness when we were children. Maybe some people were. That I make an overstatement there, but in many of the cultures with myself and people I talked to, it wasn't there.
Absolutely.
So just the awareness, even if your parents were the kind of parents who had all that compassion and communication, it might not even been in the vernacular.
100%. I don't think I heard about mindfulness or what it was until, I don't know, probably in my 40s again.
That was for those weird people in California.
Hippies.
Those tree hugging people.
Exactly.
That I want to be, that I try so hard to be now.
Exactly.
So you're putting this voice in your book and matching other voices out there, hopefully is changing this overall, that we're not afraid to have these conversations. We're not living in the isolation. And I see this in disordered eating, and I think you've kind of alluded to this, but earlier, better, I'm guessing. But is there a chance for that? Was there ever a moment, do you think, where you look back and said, had we been able to start sooner? Or did it come at you like a bunch of bricks and there was just no way to even imagine a preventive plan or doing it earlier?
Well, you raised some really good points there because my issues with weight and body image, again, go to my childhood. So my mom and my pediatrician put me on my first diet when I was 11.
Oh.
I got really big messages around my body with my mom. And then my dad, who refused to disappoint me, so he'd take me out for treats all the time. I'm talking about when I was little. Then add on, to your point, the cultural beauty lessons. And until about 10 years ago, I spent every day of my life obsessed about what my body looked like, what my weight was, what diet I was on, or that I had fallen off of, or how many calories I was eating, or when was I joining Weight Watchers again. I've been on every diet program that exists. And I go into this in the book again, in the same thing, hope to show this is a pattern that repeats. So when I had my own daughter, I knew how awful that was and how terrible I felt about myself because of this background, but I didn't know what to do instead. So instead, the first time I got into therapy, she was 6 months old. And this was a big reason why, because my Weight Watcher leader was a therapist. So she was my first therapist. That illuminated some patterns for a while, but we fall back into patterns just so easily without that diligence.
Yeah.
And again, that's another part of resilience. How do we fight that pull when it comes? Because it does always come.
I'm sure some of your thoughts stream in.
Of course, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
it's light years ahead of where it used to be, but it absolutely still happens. But I'm so much more aware of it now. But yeah, so back then it was like, okay, I'm just going to do the opposite. I won't talk about her body and I won't whatever. And that ultimately, I think energetically was essentially the same thing. Then you add on to your point, growing up in this culture, of course, social media is coming on the rise. There were always bullies, but my daughter was born in 1998. So she's in that first wave of kids using social media and middle school.
And we're not prepared to parent that, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. There's that too. And so again, it's like the perfect storm of all of these things, and a pediatrician trying to talk about it. So you're going to the pediatrician, you're trying to do what you think is right, and the pediatrician's trying to do what she thinks is right. Bring it up, but not make it a big deal. I mean, culturally, that's a huge problem and a huge piece of this. And my daughter, still to this day, will say less about the family aspects of things related to her diagnosis than the bullying. So that is a topic that I think doesn't get enough conversation either. For the actual time of diagnosis, my mother died very suddenly, and 3 weeks later, my daughter had her first symptom. So there was actually not really much of a lag time to treatment because we started getting on it right away. But I know your question was backing the bus up more culturally, and I do not have a good answer for that. Yes, we have body positivity movement now, which we didn't have then, which better than nothing, I guess. It's a very complex matter that doesn't have any easy answers for sure.
It doesn't. And people that do what I do and work in disordered eating, we're always trying to find advocacy places and medical settings and in schools and coaching and places where those messages get instilled and educating our families. Their meaning is good and their intentions are fabulous, and they sometimes just say and do things that are harmful and don't know any better. So that's why we're talking.
Yes, and I would say, I'm just going to throw this out there because I think it's true. I would say that is equally as true about the medical community. I mean, I was just talking to somebody the other day. Pediatricians need to be much better educated about this. Take, for example, my daughter now as an adult. So she goes for her checkups, but it's like the first time she has a lot of anxiety around the medical community because of everything that she's been through. So I called them ahead. I said, do not weigh my daughter. This is a very common thing for people who have had disordered eating.
Good for you.
And every time she goes, they weigh her. But she wants to know, even still, all these years later. So she doesn't say no. There's still things going on under there. It's
nothing for you in that number.
We just have to change this dynamic. And I actually talked recently to a pediatrician who lives in the UK, but she was saying to herself, she's like, I feel like all I do is stick a Band-Aid on kids and then I throw them out the door basically, because that's all I can do. And then there's not enough resources. And then they just end up right back where we started from. What are we going to do about that?
We need the broad strokes, and we do train here. We bring in fellows in psychiatry and in pediatricians to train them because they don't get trained in eating disorders. They have about a 12-page amount of time versus their entire training. So many of them are becoming mindful enough to say, can you train us in this? Because we know it's coming.
That's awesome.
And then we can tell them what not to say.
Right.
Because that is so harmful when someone in a place of supposed authority and science tells you that you're wrong. So I agree with you 100%. You know it. That's a whole nother conversation, of course, but that's why you got here, though. It is why you were susceptible and Faith was susceptible. You mentioned the parallels with your journey in Faith's. Where are you now? You mentioned all these maladaptive choices you used to make with alcohol and all these substitutions. How do you live your life now? And do you find that your behaviors are managed better?
100%. I mean, I don't judge that anymore by the size of my body, for one. So
yay.
My value and worth as a person doesn't have anything to do with that. And I really embrace a regular creative practice. I have built a community around me that I just started from scratch of women who come together to create together, to grow and learn in our authenticity together, to remind each other that we don't have to believe those messages anymore. So everything I try to do, especially now, I mean, for a long time, it was just writing the book because like I said, it took like so dang long. But now I teach classes, I do workshops, a lot around mixed media art for non-artists, because many of us got the message that creativity was only for the people who could make a living at it. And that's, of course, not true. And yes, just encouragement around healing, around the relationships we want to have. The depth of relationship we want to have with other people is on the other side of the one we have with ourselves. I say this a lot, and it's just the truth. As much as maybe we don't want it to be true, it really is. So yes, we can love other people. For a long time, I loved my daughter way more than I loved myself. I think any parent can relate to this feeling that we love our children more than we love ourselves. Mm-hmm. So I get that we can do that, but I'm sure there's somebody who has like fancy neuroscience language to like explain this, but the bottom line is how it plays out for regular Joes like us is that that love is coming out through all of the stuff, all of the things that we learned or didn't learn, all of the things that we experienced or didn't experience. And somehow we can just not get the message out that we want. It gets corrupted, coming from a well that is unhealed. And again, this is not about any kind of blame or anything. It's about, I want the people I love to know how much I love them. And I want to be able to be seen and loved back. Well, the only way we can get it back is if we are able to receive it. And how do we receive it? By giving it to ourselves as well. So it's a feedback loop of sorts.
And it takes time to develop that if it's not intrinsic. You had to work and do the work to learn to do that. It was not natural for you.
100%. I mean, I did not get the final, what I consider the final piece of the puzzle to get to where I am now. I did not get until about a year ago when I was in the throes of finishing this last version of the book because something was missing. I didn't know what it was. And I was working with my therapist. And so I was 54. So yes, we can be walking, living, breathing, communicating, all the things that alive people do and not have any idea, as weird as this sound, everything about us was formed in the effects of traumatic upbringing. I never saw myself that way because I didn't experience sexual abuse or physical abuse. I didn't grow up in poverty, had two parents in my home. I knew they loved me. Like that kind of language never entered the equation. Even all the treatment we went through with my daughter, we went through all of that. It was years later that final insight came into place. And now it's one of those things like you never saw anything and now I can't unsee it because like so many people are talking about it now, which to your point, so many more people are talking about it. It's so important. But you can be living with the effects of trauma if you don't tick all those adverse childhood experience boxes. You haven't been to war. They're the right boxes for some people, but they're the wrong boxes for some of us. Who knew?
And emotional neglect and versions of it are far more damaging than physical and sexual abuse, believe it or
Yeah.
not. And when your expectations from the people that are supposed to protect you are not met, that does something to somebody. And it does it to the point where you have to typically go and get professional help to rework how you look at the world and yourself. And you did that. I'm going to guess that was a little bit of a spectrum because you mentioned this 10 years and a year ago. Did it start getting better though as you did the work or was it all or nothing? Did you start to feel better for this past 10
Oh,
years?
yeah. I mean, it didn't take, that was just like the final puzzle piece. But I would say once I got what my therapist was trying to say about taking care of myself, and then once I actually started to engage in doing some of that, which again, I brought up creativity because I had to like get
Mm-hmm.
quiet and figure out what did I want to do. And I had always been creative as a child and it was a part of me. So I returned to that. And yes, it's a snowball, right? It's not like you just suddenly step and you're there. I mean, it's a snowball effect. And so all these things start happening. And my own recovery is not linear. Like we talk about it for our kids, neither is mine. So it's not like just a straight line, but oh, yes, it grows on itself. And so once you start to experience it, though, you don't want to go back. That's the thing. It's
Yes.
like it's hard to get to that point because there's so much that maybe is working against you. But once you have a glimpse of what it's like on the other side, you're in. No, you're
You're
in. You're sold. You're good. Doesn't mean you don't fall back there sometimes. You know, my friends and I talk about this all the time. We forget, we fall into old patterns, whatever, but then we notice it and we go, oh, yeah, phew. And then we're back again. It's a thing.
It's quicker to reset. Yeah.
Yeah, but once you
Yeah.
have a taste of it, and that's what I try to talk to people about who aren't really at that place yet.
Wait
Yes,
for it.
just wait. I swear. I know they hear that all the time, but it's really true.
Oh, I see it all the time, and it's hard for me when I see someone who feels so desperate and dark, and I'm like, it is on the other side of that curtain. I know it's
Yes.
there. I can't tell you what it's going to be like to get there,
Mhm.
but I know it's there. And you're in that beautiful spot where you can sit and go, ah, there it is. And yet, it brings me to one of my last big questions is accountability. How do you stay on top of, and this might bend a little bit towards the stamina question, but how do you keep on top of accountability that you're in the space you want to be? And does faith do that? And do you do it as a family? Checking in, I guess.
Gosh, that's a great question. So for her, she's on her own. She's going to be 26 in December. She's living her life. She's had the same partner for 5+ years. She was in therapy for a long time. I mean, she probably took a break, I would say maybe last year. And so we need breaks. So she's on a break right now. But we've been doing it now for so long, where, again, to your point about talking about it, it's so much easier now. It was so hard at first, but now, I talk about my therapy and we just talk about the things because that's the most important thing. But I think also we're clearer, certainly I am, on what's my responsibility. So, yes, my responsibility is to take care of myself. And also, again, I've been doing it so long now that I want to do the things. It's not a battle because I want to do them. I want to do all the things I'm doing. And so, I mean, I'm a therapy junkie. I'm the first person to admit that I'm very privileged to be able to still engage in therapy, that I've had the wherewithal to be able to do that. But all the things I do and the friends I have now and the community that comes together, and even like the workshops that I'm trying to develop, these are things like I do them because it gives me joy. And I want to share. Part of going through all of this and sharing the book and sharing these things is, if that can be there in the path of someone who needs it, then that's the why. Like, that's the why.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Very well said. And you have a system in place now because of all the work you've done to protect your family. We talk about the safety net. When you do this work, your net's different. And like you said, you kind of bounce back like a trampoline instead, even when you falter. It's not far from the ground. You're gonna bounce right back up.
Absolutely.
You use three words where you talk about, I don't know if I'm going to get them in the right order: compassion, forgiveness, and gratitude. Is that the order they come in? Do you start with compassion, move to forgiveness, and then the gratitude? Does it feel like that was how you developed those three traits?
I would have to say, I can't speak for anyone else, so I don't know if there's an order for other people, but for myself, gratitude came first. And it was not gratitude in the sense where I got a gratitude journal, although I have gratitude journal because I love it. But it was the day that I was able to bring my daughter to school for ninth grade, because she had missed most of her eighth grade year in treatment. We didn't know what was going to happen, as most people don't. We didn't even know that she was going to be able to do it. It's what she wanted to do. That didn't mean it was going to work. So she had missed most of the previous year. So we had no idea what was going to happen. We had a team, we had an IEP wraparound team. We had a lot of guardrails in place. But the day I dropped her off at school, seeing her walk on campus, I literally had a feeling in my body that I had never experienced before. So when people talk about healing to an embodiment, until you have some experiences, you just don't know. And so I just did not know an experience of gratitude like that ever before in my life, still not knowing what was going to happen. So it wasn't about that, but that was a humbling moment. We had the forgiveness exercise in treatment before gratitude happened. So chronologically, the forgiveness exercise happened prior to that. But I think forgiveness and repair is also one of those things that require a lot of practice. And they're big words that I think we can understand, just like healing. I mean, I think we can misunderstand all these things. And what does it take to actually repair? And why is it so hard to say, I'm sorry? And like, why do we think as parents we don't have to say that to our kids?
Oh, we sure do, because we're not going to be right every time.
Exactly. But that's my point.
Teach them how to be sorry too.
Yeah, what a concept. I mean, gee whiz. And then to then have the realization after that about my lack of understanding about compassion. So there was a chronology for me for sure. I don't know that they necessarily have to happen that way for other people, but for what it really was, that's how the journey unfolded. And it's also about just becoming more conscious, like we were saying earlier, becoming more aware that I don't know what these things mean. And why don't I know what these things mean? Why do I actually not know what true compassion is? Why does my therapist have to challenge me? And I want to say, we had been working together for a long time, by that scene in the book where she challenges me on that. But that was the literal, I mean, some people read it and they're like, ooh, but I had a relationship with her and it was absolute best thing she could have said to me. Because then I ran out. I was going to prove her wrong.
Right.
I
Yeah.
know. And I go home, I'm pulling the books on, and I'm like, once again, oh damn. Once again, I thought I knew what I was talking about, and I so don't. So another humbling moments, letting those embodied feelings live in me, but understanding there's a reason why I don't know this stuff. And again, not about blaming people or beating anyone up, just going, why would I know this? I don't know it. So what an opportunity. This is my opportunity now to learn these things and to put them into practice and to see how they help me and help the people I love. So they did unfold in an order. I'm not necessarily sure, that they would have to unfold in that order for somebody else. Very important.
And I like even reading the book, those come up. It's almost like the language in the beginning, the words are so much more stark and sharp. And then later you start to soften into the book with you and then there's compassion. And then there's these moments and it just softens as the book goes on. It makes me think of honest, open, and willing, which are a recovery tenet. And you had that. The humbling is the willingness, isn't it? You were like, oh, okay. Even though it came with a little bit of an argument, you eventually had to be
Well,
willing to say, oh, you're right.
yeah. I think even in the writing of the book, I was reminded often that I wasn't giving myself enough breaks. So I just want to throw that out there because really the willingness, I did have the willingness, but I'm also just can easily still fall into that sort of self blame, not acknowledge the resilience that actually does exist. We are so resilient. And we're not unique in that. Resilience, I think, is another one of those words. What does that really mean? It was like such a shock to me that compassion was a skill set. Well, resilience is too.
Yeah.
I just think that that's a way of thinking about these things that we don't often talk about or hear really is that it's just a skill set. We have to learn it like we have to learn, lots of other skill sets, except these are the things that we can really build the foundation of the relationships that we want with people is to be open to the fact that maybe we don't know necessarily what all these things mean and how they can help us in our relationships.
Absolutely. It's almost like you're being deliberate with them, which then makes them a skill. Otherwise, they're just kind of a word we toss out because it seems right.
Absolutely.
And we think we all know what it means, but none of us do.
Exactly. It was such a shock.
Right? You've offered so much, and anyone who reads Bloodlines, a memoir of harm and healing, will get tons more. You talk about the journey in so many different facets. Is there one main point that you would want to communicate to a family embarking on a recovery journey with their child? What's one thing that you think stands out that's super poignant? They all are.
Well, thank you. But
I feel guilty asking you this.
well, I do get asked this question. And I know that even if I heard the thing I'm about to say back when we were going through this, I would be really pissed. But I'm just going to say it because it's really true. The idea of redefining what self-care means. If you are a family who is going through this, to maintain the level of responsibility that you want to maintain and the ability to help your child who is suffering, you have to be willing to offer yourself that grace. And if you are someone who cannot offer yourself that grace, I cannot stress enough that is not only hurting you, that is hurting your child in ways you probably cannot even see. So I know my daughter has a hard time offering herself grace because she's my daughter. I couldn't offer it to myself, so this is part of our journey. But when we cannot offer ourselves the soft place to land, the willingness to take care of ourselves, the willingness to engage with the patterns that maybe don't work, we naturally just cannot be there as effectively for our children as we would like. So as frustrating as that answer may be, because I totally get it, when there's chaos and there's all the things that happen, making space for that will feel literally impossible, but it isn't.
I want to highlight what you just said because I hear all the time, I don't have time. I can't do that. I can barely get by. And trying to explain what you just did so wonderfully that if you pay it forward and you do this, you're going to have a different outcome along the path. It's like putting that wax on your surfboard or on your snowboard. It really will make a difference, but you got to take a minute to do it.
Absolutely.
Make time for it.
100%.
Is there one word or a little grouping of words to describe your journey?
That was definitely the hardest question on your list. I have many scratch marks out because I did a whole thing here of going really had to cogitate about that. But I did come up with one word and I actually love my word. So what it is now is exciting. That's what it is now because I have a relationship with my daughter that, first of all, I never got to have with my mother, but I just love the person she is. And I love seeing her enthusiasm for life and the things that she's doing. That excites me. And I know because we've talked about it, she's read this version of the book. She knows what I stand for, why I'm talking about all these things. She's excited for me to see me doing these things. And so it's just, I kind of got goosies with that, but it's really true. I mean, we are excited for each other. We're excited for our relationship. We're just excited. And I want that for other people too.
I think it's a great word. It makes me think of the future and fun and wonder. It has so many beautiful elements to excitement and a little daring. It's like roller coaster fun. I think it's a great word. And you could not have imagined when you started this journey that the word exciting was going to come out of your mouth related to anything to do with your or Faith's journey.
That is for sure.
There's the hope and the faith.
I cannot stress that enough. I really want people who are going through this now to feel seen, to know that I fully understand how hard and traumatizing and difficult and scary that this time is. So yes, to know that years down the line that someone is using the word exciting and to talk about where we are and where we're going, it absolutely does happen.
And the book will take you on that journey. Again, it's Bloodlines, a memoir of harm and healing, Tracey Yokas. It sounds like it's anywhere you can find books. This book is out there. It's also on your website. I'll have it in the show notes and on my website. It is a must read for individuals with family members with mental health or eating disorders. No question.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having the courage to write the book and for coming in with me today to talk about it.
Thanks for listening to the Mental Health Spotlight podcast, helping you hold hope on your recovery path.